Welcome to Coach My Wellness, a weekly show dedicated to bringing you information about healthy habits and behaviors just for the health of it. Here's your hosts, Joanne and Tammy.
Welcome to Just for the Health of It by Coach My Wellness. I'm Joanne Orshan, and I'm here today with
Tammy St. Clair.
And we are picking up kind of part two of what we've been talking about, which is all about confidence, and you're dealing with self-doubt and wanting to build that confidence in your goals to truly master your own wellness. And we talked about so many things in regard to building confidence, how to do that. But in order to build confidence, the one thing that gets in our way and stops us dead in our track is fear. Don't you agree? Just think about to try to stop putting off things until you feel more confident. Like asking someone on a date or applying for a promotion. One of the things that you can do to really build your confidence in most situations is to just face your fears head on. What's the worst that can happen? Pretty much absolutely nothing. And practicing facing some of your fears that stem from a lack of self-confidence brings up a lot of issues for people. Maybe you're afraid that you'll embarrass yourself, or you think that you're going to mess up, right? So I would say try anyway. And believe it or not, a little self-doubt can help you to improve your performance. It's just, if you tell yourself that it's just an experiment, let's see what happens. Give yourself a trial run. Let's see what happens. Let's try and practice a little bit and see what happens. And you might learn that being a little anxious or making a few mistakes isn't as bad as you thought. I remember telling my kids the hardest part of making a decision is just making the decision. We got all this chatter in our heads, and we have such difficulty just making the decision. Once we do, then we can just sail forward.
Right. We can then be confident in that decision. Even if you're still like, did I make the right one? It's like, this is the decision I made. This is why I'm going forward. I often tell my clients, do it afraid. Just do it afraid. But the thing is to just do it.
Just do it.
And man, it's like putting the Nike swoosh into practice. Just do it.
I have to tell you something. This is really interesting. About 20 years ago, I can't believe it's really that long ago, my kids were taking martial arts. And there was a month where they had a free class for anyone to try and do it. So one of the other moms that was sitting there watching the kids doing this, the two of us decided that we were going to start karate. I know that, how does that tie into what we're talking about? But I remember so much that in those days, when I used to think about self-protection, taking care of myself, what do we always hear? That if someone was to attack you, walking in the streets of New York City, what is the first thing that you do? You yell.
Right.
And I can tell you that was the most challenging part for me. That when the adrenaline starts flowing and all of the anxiety starts to happen and you realize you're in an uncomfortable situation, you can't find your voice. And it took quite a bit of practice to just be able to use the words of my mouth to say stop or to express it in a truly verbal way. It took a lot of practice to do that. But I can tell you that once I was able to do that, there was this sense of calm and confidence that I had, knowing that if I was in a scenario where I was walking down a street in Manhattan and someone was to try and approach me or pick my pockets, which, by the way, did happen to me, I know that I would have the awareness and the ability to stop someone dead in their tracks as best as I could. Of course, weapons not being a part of this conversation, but I would be able to turn around and to defend myself by using my voice. And that whole portion of practice is what really gave me so much confidence. And I really call confidence posture. I think that posture is really the word that I like to use. And so people say to me, why you always seem so confident. Well, there's a reason for that. I've really practiced it.
And that's how it comes through. Is like when you practice it, you always like to say, fake it till you make it, which is true. I know I was in a situation not long ago where I got so afraid something was going on, and literally my voice caught in my throat and I could not get the words out. I could not get help out of my mouth because it was caught right in my throat. And so that's what fear does. Fear is what plays into our fight or flight, our sympathetic nervous system, right? It's a fight or flight. It's to keep us alive. And one of the ways that we react is we fight, we flee, or we freeze. And that's the one that no one ever talks about. So we fight, we flee, or we freeze. And just think about the possum that plays dead. That's the freeze. And I froze. And it was scary. And it reminded me, and you just talking reminded me about when I took jujitsu, God knows when I was a nanny way back in the 90s, in the last century. One of the things that our trainer, the sensei, was always pushing the women was to get louder when we would hit, to really let out the sound. He's like, nobody's going to be afraid of you. Nobody's going to think that if you come at them, they're going to be like, yeah, who are you? He's like, let them know that you're coming. Let them know that you're coming back at them. And it was certainly a learning exercise. And it was brought back to my remembrance very quickly a month or so ago when I got really scared of what was happening. And I couldn't get the sound out of my throat.
So it seems to me that there are commonalities of characteristics of people that are confident versus people that are not. And whether it's confident people and secure people, why don't we just talk a little bit about what some of those traits are so that maybe you can out there identify a little bit to see where it is that you might need to brush up a little bit.
So confident people always celebrate other people's success because they're not threatened by the other person's success. So they celebrate that success. Unlike insecure people who judge and are jealous. So somebody gets the promotion and the first thought in the insecure person is, oh, what did they do? How come they got that promotion? How come it's not me? What's so special about them? So that's one way you can figure out if you're secure or insecure.
Right. Open-minded versus closed-minded. Someone who's optimistic versus pessimistic.
I'm always a glass half full.
Right.
Always.
Instead of a glass half empty or less.
Person is also willing to take risks as opposed to being afraid of change. I'm usually willing to take the risk. There's some things that I'm afraid of the change, but not a lot. And I can laugh at myself while not hiding flaws, although I do hide some. So hiding flaws for insecure people.
And being decisive versus indecisive. I love this. I know you and I are definitely of this mindset about always learning and growing.
Oh my God.
We talk about this with education. We do this 24/7 instead of somebody who acts like a know-it-all. And that's so important. You know, especially with weight loss, Tammy, if you think about it, every week there's a new diet out there. There's a new gimmick out there. There's a new thing out there where people are trying to sell diets and weight loss plans and all these books. And if you think about it, you can't know it all. You have to go with the flow. You and I are always looking at the latest research, the latest information that's out there, what makes the most sense. And there's, in that mindset of learning and growing is what develops you as a human being.
Right. And you think about that. What we thought we knew 5 years ago, 10 years ago, we now know is not true. Right? Remember in the 90s, early 2000s, when the all meat, high fat Atkins diet was like all the rage. And then it went from that to all these others, the Whole30 and stuff. Your style of eating has to be maintainable. And so that's what
and not like those programs are necessarily bad. Again, it's like what works for one might not work for somebody else. We're never here to say that a program doesn't work. It's really how you work the program.
Right.
That is what makes it different, because we all have different, tastes for food. There are people that are vegans. There are people that are vegetarians. There are people that are pescatarian and really do both. There are people that might really love the regimented part of counting points, where other people like packaged food meals. It really, in coaching, what you and I do in helping our clients to build confidence is not directing to say, use this menu plan or that menu plan. We're really more about, what are your goals? What is it that you like? What's beneficial for you? And let's figure out the thing that would work best for you to get there.
Right. And can you sustain it? Can you
of course
sustain it? That's what makes this a lifestyle. That's what gives us an eating lifestyle that helps us to maintain a healthier lifestyle. Right. Now, there are lots of benefits to self-confidence besides just feeling good. You have better performance at work, at home. All of a sudden your boss gives you something to do, and instead of being like, oh, well, I don't know, this is going to take, you're like, yeah, sure, great, I can do this. So self-confidence isn't just in our skills, but it spills over into other areas of our life.
Healthy relationships. I mean, think about that one. Having self-confidence, it doesn't only impact how you feel about yourself, but it also helps you to have more compassion and to relate to other people as well. I think it also gives you the strength to walk away from relationships if you're not getting what you want or you deserve. And that's going back to what we talked about earlier of toxic people in your life, or the people whose phone calls you want to answer and they call you, right? We've all been there.
Right. And that confidence also, like you trying the karate because your kids were at the school, it makes you open to try new things. So you don't mind, that goes back to those characteristics of being able to laugh at yourself and willing to take risks. So you don't mind. You're very open to trying new things.
And of course, believing in yourself and that resilience piece can only enhance your resilience or ability to bounce back from challenges that you have that you might be facing on your journey.
Right. And I think that's the key piece there, is that resilience, and then practicing positive self-talk.
Well, being kind to yourself. I mean, self-compassion is so key, which involves treating yourself with kindness when you make a mistake or you fail or you experience a setback. It's that roller coaster in this journey of life that we all go through. Tammy, I had a client who was going through a lot of personal challenges. I mean, it just seemed like there was this black cloud that followed her from situation to situation. And I remember the conversations of her saying, why is this happening to me? I've been through this and I've been through that, and it doesn't stop. Well, the other side of that is like, who said that's supposed to stop? We've all heard, we can make all of the plans in the world with the best of intentions, and then someone up there has other plans for us, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's how we deal with all of it and treating ourselves with love and kindness and self-compassion that allows us to become more emotionally flexible and help to navigate those challenging emotions, which really enhances your connection, not only to others, but more importantly to yourself.
And I think that recognizing that being imperfect or falling short at times is part of being human. We're all in this together, right? And that's the important part, is recognizing that difficulties is simply part of the human condition. And having that recognition, it allows you to then not feel so singled out, I would say, as all of these things are only happening to me. And one thing that I know that years ago, my therapist said to me, and I now utilize this realization with others, is no, these things are not happening to you. These things are just happening. And when you realize, because there's this idea that all these things are happening to me, that it's directed specifically at you, that these circumstances are directed at you to hurt you, to harm you, specifically at you. And you're like, oh, wait, no, these things are just happening. Like most things that happen in our lives, we do not have control over. So anyone who is in any of my groups knows that I have a love-hate relationship with a couple of people.
Do you?
I love them. One of them being Brene Brown. I have a love-hate relationship with her because I love what she teaches. And then she gets a good whack in there. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. So then I hate her. The other person is Kristen Neff. And Kristen Neff, she's a psychology professor at University of Texas. And she's the first person that's actually made self-compassion a study. And she is, if you have anything that you want to know about self-compassion, she's the one to go to. Just like Brene Brown is all about vulnerability and being vulnerable and what does that mean and what does it not mean. Kristen was the first person to measure and define self-compassion. But one of the things that she talks about is self-compassion is sort of like, it's that self-kindness, but it's how would you speak to your favorite niece, nephew, child, grandchild in the same situation that you're in? And we all say, oh, I would be so helpful. I would be so supportive. So then why are you not that way with yourself?
Well, look, it's like anything. It's practice, and it's these new concepts and being consciously aware of these thoughts in order for us to take action. So when it comes to self-kindness, when you practice that, part of it is recognizing that all people are imperfect and that all people have imperfect lives. And you are kind to yourself when things go wrong instead of being critical. There's a big difference there. So in talking about some of what you said, when something goes wrong, say your first reaction might be to think, this should not be happening, or I shouldn't have that. I shouldn't. It's going back to the shoulds and shouldn't.
Right.
I shouldn't have this issue come up in my life. Everyone else is living perfectly normal, happy lives. Well, but with self-kindness, instead of thinking, poor me, you think, well, maybe everyone can fail once in a while. You can acknowledge that everyone has issues and struggles because this is what it means to be human. We are all in that. And the negative self-talk that you might have can truly limit your abilities and lessen your confidence by convincing your subconscious that you can't handle something or that it's too hard or that perhaps you shouldn't even try. Where the self-talk that's optimistic, on the other hand, can help you to think about self-compassion, which is what you're talking about, to work towards overcoming self-doubt and to perhaps take on some new challenges.
Right. And when we are able to have that kindness to ourselves, taking on those challenges brings more confidence. It's sort of like this ball of snow rolling down the hill. It's like your client who said, why is all these things happening to me? And when I said to my therapist, why these things are happening to me? And she said, no, these things are just happening. It's the state of being a human.
Do you feel, Tammy, that when you're in a situation where you feel like something is abnormal or that it shouldn't be happening to you, do you then start to somehow get into this whole mindset of self-blame?
You can, because you start to think, what did I do to deserve this? What did I do to da-da-da? And then you remember, oh, I was nasty to, Joe Schmo, or I shouldn't have cut that person off in traffic the other day. That's why I got into a car accident today, right? Our mind tries to create order out of chaos. And Meanwhile, it's just things that are happening.
Well, of course, when you're mindful, you have to be willing to face your pain and suffering and acknowledge it. And most people don't want to do that. In fact, most people usually want to avoid that. And what a lot of people do is to avoid pain is to go right to problem solving, right? So when life throws you a curveball, it's important that you do take the time to be mindful of how the struggles or failures make you feel and why they may have happened. And when you do that, you're much more likely to grow and learn from the situation. So I think back so much to when I had kids that it's the whole concept of learning from your mistakes so that you can make changes. Okay, something happened. It didn't go the way that you wanted it to. We made a mistake. How do we use our energy in a positive way to move forward instead of rehashing and dwelling over and over again about what is so wrong and what went so badly? What are the positive parts that we can have accomplished from that?
Right. It's that inner critic that is always got the stick beating us over the head, whether anyone else sees the inner critic or not. And self-criticism is very defeating. And it just plays and plays and plays and plays. And you're just like, oh my God, can I just stop thinking about that? And what mindfulness does, it allows you to be aware of your shortcomings without passing judgment on yourself. So your loved one, like I said earlier, what would you say to them? And you'd say, oh, it's okay. Everybody falls down, or you don't always get the starring role in the school play. You take the role that's given. But yet when it comes to us, we don't do that.
So some of the examples maybe of thinking about things a little bit differently is that when we have that negative self-talk is how we can reframe our thoughts into a more positive way of thinking. So for example, if you were to say, I can't handle this, or this is impossible, what about if those words become, I can do this, or all I have to do is try, or I can't do anything right becomes, I can do better next time, or at least I learned something.
Right. And I think that's where mindfulness comes in, because instead of us running away from where we are uncomfortable, we decide to learn something. We decide to sit there with that inner critic. And instead of joining in on the abuse that the inner critic is giving you, we decide, all right, I got to figure out where this is coming from. So I'm going to give you Jon Kabat-Zinn is the father of the mindfulness movement. And mindfulness has been used for decades for quitting smoking, for losing weight, for stress management, research studies. We know that it works. We know mindfulness works. His definition of mindfulness, it's amazing because it allows us to figure out how to stay in the present moment. And I just want to tell you what it is. So mindfulness is awareness that arises through paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally, in the service of self-understanding and wisdom. So in the midst of the storm, I can become aware of what's happening inside or around me by paying attention and choosing on purpose to pay attention, not running away, choosing to sit there, to stay in the midst of your heart's racing or you don't know what to do, and staying in the present moment. And when I work with my clients, I'm often telling them, stop pulling tomorrow's fears, tomorrow's problems into today. That's when we get out of the present moment, we're either pulling the things from behind, from our past up into the present so that we can have remorse about them, or we're pulling our fear from the future into today. That's why it's really important to stay in the present, because then you can move beyond anxiety and doing that non-judgmentally so that you can become better have better self-understanding and wisdom about yourself. And in doing that, in learning to stay mindful, you can overcome the inner critic because you become aware of your shortcomings without passing judgment on yourself.
And of course, learning how to do that for self-compassion is the most challenging. How we treat ourselves, the chatter that goes on within our own heads. And self-compassion really does involve recognizing the difference between making a bad choice and being a bad person. I love one of my clients. She always says this. She goes, remember, it was a bad day, not a bad life. Love that. Love that. But that's a perfect example of having learned how to be mindful and staying in the present moment. It's a bad day. Today's the bad day. It's not a bad life.
It's not a bad life. It's not the past coming forward. It's not the future. I'm not projecting into the future. That's a wonderful example of mindfulness and staying in the present moment. Right now, it's pretty crappy. It's a bad day.
Well, look, when you practice self-compassion, you have to understand that making bad decisions does not automatically make you a bad person. Instead, you can recognize that your value and your worth is truly unconditional.
I think, but so many of us are in relationships or we grew up with parents that only made us feel loved or accepted when we were being good. And so we tend to do that to ourselves and we tend to repeat that. But learning how that self-compassion can actually move you forward. I'll often say, when I'm asking my clients about how do they talk to themselves, what's that inner dialogue about? And as Americans, we're very much about our rights. But I have no right to speak to myself the way that I sometimes did in the past.
Right. And the self-compassion piece really does provide a sense of self-worth, but not in a narcissistic way like self-confidence can at times. There's a big difference there.
Right. It allows you to have that balanced view of yourself and recognizing where your mistakes and failures and shortcomings are, because you can view them objectively. They're just things that are. And we can change those things without demeaning ourselves.
And I think that there are a lot of studies that will show that people who do practice self-compassion also have more social connections. They tend to have a higher emotional intelligence and they have a greater overall satisfaction with life because they're also more caring, supportive, and empathetic. Where research does show that people who are self-compassionate have less anxiety, depression, and fear of failure. So when we were talking before about taking a step outside of the box, when you're feeling more confident in your life, you're more willing to do that. And there's no guarantee that everything is going to go well in life for you.
Right.
You've tried. And if you haven't tried, then it's never going to get better for you. So,
right. Because that internal dialogue has changed from, if I can't do this and I can't do this well, then I'm an idiot or I'm a failure, to, hey, it's something new to try. I may not be good at it. I may figure out that I don't really like it. But that's where self-compassion can help soften those blows.
Right. So I would say that for all of you that are listening out there and working to build your confidence, especially as perhaps a lot of you are trying to lose weight out there and change your body image, just don't compare yourself to anybody else, because no two bodies are the same and everybody has their own strengths. And remember that in this room, there was a world for people of all shapes and sizes. We thank you so much for joining us today. I know this was pretty heavy. We were talking about confidence, how to really improve our lives. Please join Tammy and I starting in July on Thursday evenings at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on our Instagram Lives, where you can have communication with us and we can chat. And that's at CoachMyWellness_CMW. We also have our website. We would love to have you go there and subscribe and get a copy of our monthly newsletter at CoachMyWellness.com. And again, we are here every Sunday on 360 Talk Radio for women, about women on Self-Care Sundays. So you and I are getting pretty confident with our public speaking, right?
Right. We're getting so much better. We're so much more confident and comfortable. But this is the perfect example. We had to take that step out in order to develop a whole new side to ourselves and to our coaching business and to our reach and scale and all of those things. And we could have chosen to have negative internal self-talk and not tried this new stuff.
So thank you so much for joining us today, and we will see you next week. I'm Joanne Orshan.
And I'm Tammy St. Clair.
Just for the health of it.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Coach My Wellness. For more information about healthy habits and behaviors, visit our website at coachmywellness.com and follow us on Instagram at coachmywellness_CMW for weekly live streams Thursday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern. We hope to see you there.